Welcome. Today we're speaking with Miss Carley Goodkind, who's a high school German teacher in the USA with 23 years of experience. She serves as a Global Scholars Program Coordinator in her school district, and Carley has received the 2020 Teacher of the Year Award from the Wisconsin Association of Language Teachers and the 2021 to 2022 Wisconsin Global Educator of the Year Award from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. She loves collaborating with others to innovate and advocate for global competence and strong, effective K-16 plus world languages programs. Carley, welcome. It's so awesome to have you here today with us.
Thank you for having me. Enjoy talking with you.
Great. Well, congratulations on both of those awards. It's very exciting. Before we get started, I'd just love to know, what does it mean to you to be a global educator?
Thank you. A global educator to me is someone who engages in lifelong learning and the development of one's global competence, while at the same time helping students develop skills and dispositions and knowledge to thrive in our interdependent world. And what I mean by global competence is that one asks questions and is curious about the world, and they seek information to understand the world that we live in. They strive to understand and recognize diverse perspectives, and they're able to communicate their ideas clearly with diverse audiences in multiple languages. And they develop skills to take action to improve conditions in their local and in their global communities. Global competence is an area that I'm really intensely passionate and curious about, and it's an area that I feel is of vital importance to develop within ourselves and within our students in order to create a world of thinkers who can gather and share information in multiple languages, and they can take action towards achieving peace.
Well, you've brought up a really important point there around not just developing this in students, but also in educators. But I'd love to hear, what is some of the work that you've been doing with students in this space over the last decade or so in global education and world language instruction?
I continually strive to find ways to contribute to developing global competence. And so I consider every moment as an opportunity to engage others in making connections to relevance of language learning and developing global competencies. And so some of the staples in my practice as a world language educator is to use authentic texts, videos, and music, images in my lessons for my students to learn about the world and other perspectives. And what I mean by authentic is texts or materials that are created by speakers of the language that's being instructed for speakers of that language. So they get a direct insight to cultures through authentic materials that are used. I also provide lots of opportunities in my class for learner choice and exploration, and time for students to reflect. We use a lot of global thinking routines such as the See, Think, Wonder and the 3 Whys, which encourage students to examine closely something and also consider perspective. And I also seek opportunities to connect students to language and culture and people through German language competitions, exchange opportunities, and field trips.
That is a lot. And I think you've really touched on this idea of the modernity of having relevant, engaging texts.
Global engagement is baked into any learning experience. Even our annual gingerbread contest held at my school. One year, students incorporated the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals and places around the world in their projects through the theme Go Global. And what I noticed was that this lasting impression was really evident in a recent circle talk discussion that my students had in German, where they shared stories of their past gingerbread projects, including their attempts to address the global issue of plastics and our environment.
But you've not just been involved in your classroom work and your schoolwork. I know that you've been involved in some wider communities, which is one of the reasons you've won these awards. Please tell us what's some of the work that you've been doing more broadly.
A colleague of mine, a social studies educator, she and I are co-coordinators for our Global Scholars Program, which is offered through actually through the state of Wisconsin, and our district has a program connected to that. And within this program, students have to fulfill a number of requirements focused on global education during their 4 years of high school. So the requirements include 4 years of the same world language or intermediate high-level proficiency, which B1 on the European scale. They need to engage in at least 4 credits of coursework with a global focus. That could be in science, it could be even in an English class that studies global literature. It could be in a culinary arts class that focuses on global foods. So the opportunities are quite broad. They also complete reflections on global learning and cultural literacy development through reading global literature, and that can be fiction or nonfiction by international authors, and learning experiences through art and music and films and podcasts and community-based cultural events. They also need to actively participate or hold a leadership position in 4 or more school-based extracurricular and special events with a global focus. And they need 20 or more hours of service learning projects related to a global issue. And so this program opened up many opportunities within the district, not only for students, but also for educators to collaborate. In this past year, our school library and media specialist and I collaborated on an international experience around the focus of artificial intelligence. And we had international speakers engage with our students after they had viewed a film about the global issues around artificial intelligence. So that was pretty fun experience.
Amazing. So, in what other ways have you been involved in the wider community?
Well, in my district, a little bit further out, I was a member of a small group of educators who worked with an international design expert, Greg Curtis, and we identified impacts and performance areas that are transferable in education across all content areas. And one of those impacts that we identified is global competence. So I collaborated with others on that to develop a continuum that's to be used transdisciplinary and impacts all curricular areas. I also had the honor of being a part of a committee that reviewed and revised our state's world language standards. And a new aspect to that, or a new element to our standards, is the creation of a new one called Global Competence and Community Engagement. And this standard was inspired by and heavily influenced by the Asia Society and OECD models of global competence. So the same domains of global competence, however, through the language that's being instructed.
I'm so pleased to hear that, because community engagement is such an important aspect of global education that often gets missed because people think it's about looking outwards. And I know with my work with schools, it's a piece that often hasn't been looked at. It's one of the 5 domains of our globally competent schools framework. So it's so great to hear that there's more work going on around the world in that space. Carley, do you want to speak a little bit about the conference as well?
Organize a conference every year called FLESFEST, which stands for Foreign Language in the Elementary Schools. It's modeled after we have ethnic festivals in the city that came from, so it was kind of modeled after early language learning, so novice level language learning, elementary through high school and university level instruction. And last year we held a virtual conference because we've moved that way since the pandemic. And our focus was on global partnerships. And so we brought in an amazing keynote speaker, Jennifer Klein, who's the author of the Global Education Guidebook.
And also the author of Landscapes for Learning that's just come out. Yeah.
Yes, of the landscape model. And that was really inspiring to bring her expertise to our conference. And then how can we connect novice level language learning with forming partnerships internationally? So even students at the very early beginnings of their language experience can engage in these really rich experiences that help them develop their global competence and their language skills exponentially.
Amazing. So just to wrap up, Carley, we've talked about a lot of things. What do you see as some of the emerging trends in global education at the moment?
It's an interesting question because I'm only from my own perspective, but I guess I would say that the pandemic brought on a lot of challenges, and we were suddenly thrust out of the familiar environment that we were teaching in and had to learn how to innovate within the circumstances that we were handed. And as a result, many people became more familiar with ways to communicate and facilitate learning in a digital and virtual environment. And we've found ways, as a result, to bring the world into our classrooms through Zoom, which I did not know how to use Zoom prior to the pandemic. That was
you and everybody
big
else,
learning curve.
Carley.
But I would say, emerging in world language instruction design work, at least from my vantage point, I see more development work in creating thematic units that purposefully and thoughtfully develop global competence and engaged learners. So,
awesome.
There's a lot of challenges that go along with all of these things. Time, the lack of time is a big challenge. To develop rich resources takes time. However, when we collaborate and we bring our strengths and our expertise to the table and share, we can make a lot more progress and much richer, materials and experiences for students. But I think another challenge is flexibility within our schools for collaboration and time and space. And then also continuing to break down these silos in education. It's not just math or science or English and world languages, but we can work collaboratively across to develop units and instruction that go deeper and help create more, critical thinkers who are ready to engage in our interdependent world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that at MEG, we've been having a lot of those conversations as well, and particularly in some of this emerging tech space around like AR and VR and just engaging learners in this new world of hybrid learning that we're all operating in as well. Carley, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you share with us and your generosity of ideas and experience. And I would encourage anyone that's listening to this to reach out to you via your social media channels. Thank you for your time. Do you have any parting thoughts before we wrap up?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me for this interview.